Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Module 3 of the Resiliency and Wellness program, which is being run by Terry McCloy of Future Pathway. Terry is an internationally recognised leadership and change expert and one of the most highly acclaimed leadership facilitators globally. He has led leadership forums and retreats all over the world and is recognised for his understanding of leadership in challenging times. Terry also has successfully led over 15 major organisational change initiatives and has done this through a focus on people and outcomes. As a result of this experience, Terry has distilled his leadership and change expertise into the highly acclaimed Leadership Essentials program. Terry founded Future Path International over 30 years ago, and today they are the leading providers of leadership development, coaching and change management within New Zealand and APAC. The Future Path National Coaching Centre is the largest in New Zealand, with over 15 coaches who work both nationally and globally. Future Path's promise is simply the best and nothing less. Terry has also been internationally recognised on a number of occasions and was awarded the CPI International Leadership Excellence Award for his contribution to change and transformation internationally. So I'd now like to hand you over to Terry.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for the great introduction again, Jenny. I'm starting to get really, I think I might actually get Jenny as my publicist. That's really a great introduction. So we're talking today about resilience and wellness, and the workbook you've got is called Kikaha, Stay Strong. And what we're going to be covering today is looking at energy sources, energy practices, how you build elements of well-being, and how you build a gratitude practice. Gratitude practice we're going to talk about a little later, and I'd love to know if anybody is doing a gratitude practice. Please put something up in the chat if you are. Probably one of the most impactful things that you could do to build your resilience and well-being. So as I've said in some of the previous seminars, resilience, it means different things for different people. But the one that I love is the Winnie the Pooh one, which I've mentioned before, about Tigger. And there's got this cartoon of Tigger jumping. And Tigger says, you know, it's not how high you can jump, it's how long you can keep jumping. So we're going to be looking at that today. And then in the next session, next week, we're going to be looking at being present, mindfulness, the resilience toolkit, breath work, recognizing triggers, limiting beliefs, and then building yourself your own resiliency practice. If you've got any questions, and I'd love to hear some of your questions, put them up in the chat. Love to hear them, happy to answer them, because I think sometimes, you know, some of the things we're saying or some of the concepts we're saying, you're like, I'm not sure about that, or how would I apply that? Remember also that the workbook that you have got is interactive. You can go and fill it out. So you've got PDF fillable sections on your workbook that enables you to go in and you could type in whatever your thoughts are about something and use it as a reflection. Go back in at times and go, and maybe do this regularly. And we'll talk in the next seminar about building a resilience practice. It's like anything in life. Unless you constantly keep doing it, it doesn't embed itself. And I'll just revisit what we talked about in the first session, because I love this story about Dr. Norman Gumesme, who was the founder, person who coined resilience in the mid-50s. In the school in Harlem, low decile, little boy whose mother was an alcoholic, drug addict, etc. Little boy used to come to school every day with a battered lunch tin, and in it he had 2 slices of bread, nothing on the bread, 2 slices of bread. And Gumesme said to him, why do you bring 2 slices of bread? And he said, because I'm the same as everybody else. I sit there and have my bread sandwich with everybody else. And so it's interesting because resilience is a choice. Resilience is a choice. And I was working with a group of people this morning and we were talking about this, and I said, it's easy to externalize blame. It's easy to externalize, yeah, well, if I had been born differently, or if I was in a different situation, or if. That's externalizing it. It's not actually owning it. And to build resilience and wellness, you need to own it. Because the moment you start owning it, and we'll talk today about the gratitude practice, it's really, really powerful in changing your perspective. So quickly going through what we've covered is one of the things I think that's important is to work out what it is you want to be remembered for. What is your legacy? Or if you want to call it, what is your vision or your life goal? I like to term it my true north. So what is my true north? And if you said to me, what's my true north? One of my true norths is making a difference. I want to be able to make a difference. If I can't make a difference, I ask myself, why am I doing it? To make a difference. And again, we'll come back and talk about gratitude, because just before we came online, I was talking to Jenny about the things that make a difference in people's lives. And the example I was giving to her, I was talking to a person I was coaching about a week and a half ago. And one of the questions I said to this person was, what brings you joy? How do you find and identify the points in your life that bring you joy? And she thought probably for about a minute, and she said, I don't know. And I think part of building resilience is about being able to focus on those things that mean something to you, that engage with you and make you who you are. So it's about being self-aware. It's about challenging how you think about things, as we've talked about in the previous two seminars. Big skill that we've talked about, reframe your thinking, because the world around us is changing. It's changing more than any other time in the history of humankind. And guess what? It's going to accelerate. It's going to change even more. And I was talking to a client the other day, for example, and he has put together this proposal for his board. He's done all of the stuff, really quite impressive. I said to him, wow. I said, that's amazing what you've been able to do. He said, yeah, AI. He said, AI did probably 60 to 70% of this. And he said, then I've gone and fine-tuned it. And that was sort of the shift that we're seeing in our society, because people can go, oh, AI, but AI has got some really valuable uses. And as I mentioned in one of the seminars, around medicine, around the ability to synthesize information. But we're living in a world where these things are going to become increasingly normal. They're just normal. So one of the things we've talked about is your circle of influence and control. It's identifying the things in your life that you can control and the things that you can't. I saw a quote recently where it says humans, and there's research to back this up, humans are conditioned to try and focus on the things they can't control, because guess what? They then don't have to worry about doing too much about them, because they're going, well, I can't control that. But it's surprising the moment that you actually start focusing on what you can control, how your life changes. And we go back, and if you looked on the pages we did in the last seminar, which is around page 12, around how you manage your stressors, it's around how you're thinking. We covered that in the last seminar. If you remember, about go back and look at what your belief systems are from the time you were a kid. Because a lot of how you think today, a lot of the patterns in your life today will be the result of your experiences, but most importantly, probably coming from your upbringing and then filtered through a whole lot of things, which may be culture, religion, experiences, and all of that. But that bedrock foundation is going way back into your childhood. Key thing that is really important, we talked about last time, is understand which part of your brain is now processing information. People love to deal with facts and figures, but if you are stressed, that part of your brain doesn't really engage to the same degree as your limbic system, which creates pictures. It's our old brain. It's our fear and flight brain. It handles things in pictures. It handles things in feelings and emotions. And it is our default mechanism when we go under stress. And guess where that part of the brain goes for reference? It goes back to our past, to our experiences. And as we can work out, if the world around us is changing and we're using a reference point back in our past as the predictor of what we should do in the future in a changing world, we are not going to be that successful, generally speaking. And you see this when people get made redundant or things happen in their lives. They go, I never saw that coming and I'm not equipped to handle this. And they panic about, I could lose my house and all sorts of things that go on in people's minds. And yet when you boil it all down, most of those things don't happen. But we go back there. So there's a psychological principle. Under stress, we revert to learned behavior. Learned behavior is our past experiences. And so part of these seminars that we are talking about is changing that thinking. We call it reframing. But if you remember in the last seminar, we also talked about a change transition framework, which was on page 18 of your workbook. And there are 3 stages on this. And when we run workshops in person, I quite often ask, which is the most important stage, 1, 2, or 3? And most times people go 1. You need to go back to the beginning and change how you think at the beginning. The answer is no, you're going to 3. You define what a picture of success looks like. And guess which part of your brain engages when you define a picture of success? Your limbic system, your limbic part of your brain creates a picture. And the best example is Christmas for kids, right? You could actually give them factual data about Christmas, but in their mind, they've got this picture of Christmas. And the funny thing, and this is a really funny thing, not scientific research, it's anecdotal research. But one of the most common things that I witnessed a lot of adults saying is, oh, Christmas is, if it was raining, Christmases are not like this when I was a kid. It was always sunny. And over the years, I've sort of watched that happen. And my guessing is that the weather back then was probably no different to what it is now. We had probably roughly the same percentages of Christmases as wet or misty or whatever as they were sunny. But the interesting thing was the limbic brain was happy. The family was together. We were getting presents. Everybody was happy, etc., etc. So it became like a sunny time in our lives. And we go back and look at our childhood and we do process things like that. So how we actually think about what's happening in our lives is critical to our resilience. Most importantly, it's critical to our wellness. Now, a very simple example around wellness is people who, if you know of anybody who's got a glass half full or a glass mostly empty, what do you feel when you meet those people? Because they're always slightly depressing. They're always looking at the negative. And part of what we're going to be talking about today is around how you build a practice to not go to that place. Build a practice around looking at what is possible, what is positive. And it's an interesting thing that a lot of people don't want to go there because it's easier to go, well, I have no control. So part of it is control. Part of it is how you're thinking. Part of it is understanding what is coming from your past that is predicting your future. And your past, very simply put, is no predictor of your future. Now, that's a really interesting thing. Your past is no predictor of your future. So now let's look at what we want to cover today. We want to look at energy. So page 20, a very wise man there at the bottom, so that's me, says every thought creates a positive or negative energy. Every thought creates a positive or negative energy. So some of you may do this, but some of you may know people who do this. You go, oh, we should go and do this. And they go, oh, you'll never get a booking at that restaurant. Or we should do such and such. And they go, oh, that's not possible. You could never do that. And so it's always what is not possible. Now, if you're the opposite of that, like myself, I really can't live in a space where people think like that all the time. I will exit that space because that kind of negative energy pulls you down. The other side of it is if you can actually focus on the positive, that energy pulls you up. Now think about it from a health terms. And we could spend all day talking about this from a wellness perspective. But the most important thing is to look at your 4 sources of energy. So they're the 4 sources on page 20. Your physical energy, emotional energy, mental energy, and we call it being. You can call it what you like. You can call it spiritual, you can call it purpose of life or whatever. We just call it being because that's what we're here for. It's the big picture of why we are on this planet doing what we do. So why are these important? Well, because two things. One is we will have a preference in terms of where our energy sits. And that preference will change during the day, it will change from time to time. But it's really important to know what your preference is. The second part of this equation is under stress, where does your energy go? So I'll give you a personal example. If I get really, really stressed, I will go into mental space, right? I'm not mental, but I go into that mental space and I will start overthinking stuff, which is not a good place for me because I start getting to that bigger picture. We talked about it, catastrophization. I end up spending a lot of time in the limbic space. And I know when that's beginning to happen because my way of describing it is I feel congested in the head. So what I do is that I know what works for me is I will go for a walk. Up here, I'm in Auckland, and down here we've got Victoria Park, and down by the tank farm, I'll go for a walk for about an hour or 2 hours. And in that walk, I'll ask myself questions. I will go, why am I feeling like this? What can I control? What can't I control? Whatever it may be. So physically, I'm doing a walk, but the walk is clearing my mind, and I will always come back and I'm decongested. I will go, okay, I've made these decisions and I'm clear about what it is that's important that I need to do or not do or whatever. So I de-stress by doing physical. In one workshop I ran, I had a person in the workshop and she said, oh, I'm the same. When I get stressed, I go and run 26 kilometers. And she was very fit. And I'm thinking, I said to her, you must get stressed a lot. She said, trust me, I do. But it's what works. Now think about this. If you go into that emotional energy space when you get stressed, what would you need to do? You'd need to sit and talk to somebody, wouldn't you? You'd need to have people listening to you. You'd need to be able to articulate what it is that is really stressing you and feel that you could get it out. So that would then bring you back into a balance again. Or if, for example, when you get stressed, you need to get being. And I had one person in one workshop, and he was very religious, and he said, I go to church, and that works for me. So there's no right or wrong here. It is just what works for you individually in terms of being able to bring your energy back into alignment. And it's understanding how you do that and how you need to protect it. And protecting your energy is really critical. But I'll tell you a funny one. I was running a workshop about 2 years ago, and there was a person in the workshop, and she said to me, there's a fifth quadrant. And I said, what's that? She said, sleeping. I thought she was joking, but she was serious. But I think sleeping sort of comes into the other four. But if sleeping is your fifth quadrant, put it in. But it's around being conscious of what happens when you're in stressor situations versus non-stressor situations. It's also important that you can work out what you need to do to bring yourself back into balance. But during the day, you know, you do go through balances when you go like this through the day. And many years ago, I discovered this technique that the Italians use, which is dolce, which is the sweetness of nothing. And so it's about just being able to stop for 5 minutes or 10 minutes, whatever you like, and do nothing. And so if it's a nice sunny day, I would probably just go and stand outside in the sun or sit out in the sun and just look at the sky and go, wow, I'm not thinking of anything. My mind is just empty. I'm just sitting there going, wow, how lucky I am to be able to sit in the sun like this here in this country. So you just roll through that thing in your mind, and all of a sudden you'll start finding things come back into alignment. Find those things that work for you. Could be different things for different people. Could be different things for different people. Could be that every 20, 30 minutes, if you follow time management, Pomodoro technique, probably every 25, 30 minutes you want to take a break. You might get up and walk around the office or walk around the block or something. But whatever it is, find what it is that works for you and then do that. The secret around physical energy is around how you protect it. And part of that is also around diet, it's around thinking, and it's around managing what you can and can't control in your life. So the good news is if you practice a resiliency and wellness practice, as we're going to be talking about in the next seminar, you will find a transformation in your life. The bad news is you can't just do it and stop. You need to make it part of your life so it becomes as natural to you as breathing. And so we'll talk about in the next seminar about breathing as well. So there's these things that we're not taught at school that I think are really vital to building resiliency and wellness. So on page 21, we've got a really good little checklist there that you can go through and look at how do you optimize physical energy, how do you optimize emotional, mental, and being energy. And part of this is not suitable for everybody. Pick out the ones that you really like. So like, for example, if you said to me, under the physical energy, you need to schedule a weekly social sports session, I'd go, oh, maybe. But I'd like to go, I do go for a daily walk. I do go to the gym. I do deep breathing. I understand nutrition and use it. I have deep sleep rituals, eat healthy, and I move the body as much as possible. Certainly, I have a policy of moving the body every day in one way or another. And the interesting thing about that, don't start big, start small. Just do small things and get yourself into the habit of doing some of these things that really, really work for you. So on page 22, we have some practices that you can use. So the energy of the mind is the essence of life, and that's from Aristotle. I think the sadness that I see often is that people stop using their mind when they leave university or leave school. They get into routines. We all do it at times, but it's about challenging yourself to say, what does my best life look like? Now, the amazing thing, and I've been coaching for 30 years, the amazing thing I can tell you is that when people feel that they are actively living their best life, you can see in them, you can see the joy, the passion, and the love of life that they have. You can see that in them, they are generally more achieving, they're more happier, and they're more healthier. And it just doesn't happen. And we live in a world where we've got so many distractions around us. For example, TV, social media, fast foods. I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about the amount of fast foods that get delivered, and we started with my daughter. She was on fast foods being delivered by Uber Eats, and I said to her, we talked about this, and now she's stopped. And she said to me the other day, I cannot believe how much money I've saved. And I said, yes, but what kind of food you're eating now? She said, well, food we cook ourselves. And she said, I have to admit, I really don't have a big appetite now for fast food. So whatever works for you. But I think, the reality is there are certain things that work and certain things that don't. So the first one that is important is physical exercise. Now, I've done a lot of research into aging, and I wrote a whole program called Life Architects, which we deliver worldwide. It's around aging. It's a study of aging. Now, there's many things that help in aging, but one of the key things in aging is movement. Movement, one of the key things. The second thing is how you exercise your brain. So we've got down here, physical exercise. Get yourself into some kind of physical exercise, because I have yet to meet a person who is dealing with stresses in their lives that some kind of physical exercise that works for them doesn't actually change their mood. Now, there's also medical research showing that you do a 30-minute walk, you come back when your endorphins have changed your body, which will last for 2 hours. So it's a medical fact that movement will help improve how you think and feel. Do crazy fun things, you know? Gosh, the world is full of telling us what we can't do. But be yourself. Do crazy fun things. So I think that's really, really important. It's around feeling that you can be you. So if you want to sing in the shower and your partner, if you're in a relationship and your partner doesn't mind, and the dogs and cats in the neighborhood don't mind either, sing your heart out. Go for it. People. Now, this is a big one. You remember in previous seminar, I said, you don't want to surround yourself with toxic people. And I said earlier in this seminar, imagine you're with a person whose glass is practically empty every time, and they tell you what you can't do. Or, which is sometimes even worse, they're telling you what you should do. And it was interesting. I was talking to a person, it was the middle of last year, and we were talking about this whole concept. And I said, well, all my life, people have told me what I should do. They want me to be beige. They want me to be this beige person who fits in and does everything. And I don't. I tend to operate at two ends of the spectrum. I tend to be fairly forthright in my thinking. I tend to be a reasonably strong personality. I tend to be very kind and generous at one end, but I can be at the other end quite hard-nosed. And so I operate at these two ends of the spectrum, and people want me to go, you need to be in the middle. Why? It's because it makes them feel good. It doesn't make me feel good. So surround yourself with people who support you, who go, okay, I'm not like you, but I'm okay with you being you, Interestingly, our facilitators tell us anecdotally that two big sources of stressors come from whānau and from work. So whānau is really good to tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing. And you need to find your own pathway. So make sure the people around you are people who support you, who are positive, who encourage you. And those are the kind of people you want to surround yourself with, not the people who tell you what you can't do, what you shouldn't do, and what you should be. Rest and sleep. Now, a lot of people go, oh yeah, I like to sit up until 2 o'clock in the morning and, don't get the sleep. If you want to build resilience and wellness, you need to get good sleep. Now, this varies from person to person, so I'm not going to say you should sleep for 6 hours or 7 hours or 8 hours or whatever. You need to find what works for you. But the secret to good sleep, you need to be going to bed at roughly the same time each night. And you need to have a routine before you go to bed. So you don't want to be drinking coffee before you go to bed. You seriously shouldn't be watching TV, iPads, phones, that thing before you go to bed. Give yourself some time and some space where you can relax and decompress before you go to bed or go to sleep. So get yourself into a bed, rest, sleep ritual that helps. And then try to find yourself a balanced sleep. And you'll find that all of a sudden perspective on the world changes, because from your own experience, the times when you were sleep deprived, how you saw the world around you was a wee bit different to what it was when you were well rested. And it's interesting how many people, and you probably come across it, may experience it yourself, who go on holiday and spend half their holiday ill because all of a sudden the body just decompresses from all that internal stress that it's had because you're working too long, not sleeping enough, and all of a sudden on holiday you're getting the sleep and the body relaxes, and you start getting physical manifestations of the body repairing itself. Balanced nutrition, we talked about that a moment ago, about making sure what you eat. And I'm a great believer. I'm not a big fan of dieting. I'm not a big fan of all stuff. Find out what you like to eat, and then eat it in moderation. So I've had this conversation with many nutritionists, and they tell me you need to be eating tofu and bean sprouts and all that sort of thing. And I go, I can't. I don't like them. So I need to eat what I like, but I need to be sensible about it. And there's some good tools we can use to help change what you eat. Mindfulness. Now, walking down the street this morning, I passed 4 people walking on their phones. Now, that's not mindfulness. They're doing 2 things at once and probably doing both fairly badly or not as well as they could be. Practice mindfulness. Practice being in the present moment, not split. So that you're giving people your attention, you're giving what you're doing in your life attention. And it's amazing when you walk down the street and you're looking around at things that are happening around you or things that are there in the street around you, how much more that you see. So mindfulness is about being present. And we could talk a bit more about mindfulness, but I think the simple definition of mindfulness is just being present, focusing on what you do 100% and not trying to do 4 things at once. Manage stresses. Manage your stresses. That's about the control we talked about. 8 life pathways. And the 8 life pathways are building yourself pathways of life practice that you want to focus on to actually build your resilience and wellness practice. And the last one, which we've talked about earlier today, it's about choice. You choose. You choose. You choose the type of life you have. You choose the quality of life within it. And yes, there are things that are external to us that sometimes we can't control. But the moment we actually start looking at things that we can control, we find a different, and I like this term because I came across it recently. I like it. We find a different locus of focus. So locus is what we spin off, where our focus is. So if you're not mindful, your locus of focus is in 2 places at once, which is for the human mind not a great place. Whereas if you can get your focus on one thing, what you choose to do, and focus on that. You don't have to focus on it forever, but you focus on it for the period of time you want to. And for those of you who are into time management or have been on any of our time management seminars, Pomodoro technique gets you focused on something for 25 minutes, take a break, come back, focus on something else for 25 minutes. And when people do that, the transformation in what they can achieve and what they deliver is remarkable. And if you keep doing that, all you're doing is building your resilience muscle, and it gets into your wellness as well. So let's look across at page 23, which is the elements of well-being. There's 5 elements that we think are important. And I love this quote. I put it in this workbook because it's one of my favorite quotes from Hans Christian Andersen, who wrote a lot of fairy tales. But he says, "Just living is not enough," said the butterfly. "One must have sunshine, freedom, and a little flower." So just living is not enough, said the butterfly. One must have sunshine, freedom, and a little flower. And what's that in essence summing up is what brings you happiness and joy. And resilience people and people who focused on building resilience, they spend a lot more time in places of joy. And I think joy is a really important one. It's not a word that Kiwis like using much, but I think it's a really important one. And so you can translate joy into something else. It's the things you love doing, the things that really, really are important to you. The most important thing, I think, is that don't wait until an event happens in your life that forces you to start doing this. So often we come across people who are made redundant, and then all of a sudden they're focused on what they need to change in their lives. But now becomes a traumatic event because A, they didn't choose to be made redundant, and B, they didn't choose to have to make these changes. And often, as fast as they can get to another job, then they go back to doing what they did before until another event like that happens. And they are highly stressful. Practice being adaptable, practice building your resilience. So when change happens in our lives, yeah, sure, it's going to be an event that actually does throw us, but we handle it in a very different way, particularly from our wellness and health perspective. So the 5 things to look at is your career well-being. surprisingly, many people we coach do not have an idea of what it is they want to do in terms of their career. A lot of people have just ended up doing what they're doing because they did. Their parents either did it, they went to university, got a degree, or somehow they fell into something. So work out what it is you want to be doing, what brings you joy, or where your passion lies. Where does your passion lie? Trust me, if you went and asked all of our coaches in our National Coaching Centre, they'd say the same thing. A lot of people just doing stuff because they've always done it. They're not doing what actually makes them feel great or brings them happiness or joy or is their passion. Social well-being, very important, because it's been proven that if humans don't have strong social networks or strong social interactions, it does affect their wellness. So have meaningful friendships in your life and a supportive whānau. Financial well-being, and that's probably one thing that a lot of people really focus on quite well, is because they're going, well, okay, I need to pay the mortgage off, I need to make sure about retirement. So financial well-being is a good one. Make sure that if you have got a long-term plan, get expert advisors to help you and to build a secure future. If you're in any kind of relationship, make sure you set time aside to sit down and have conversations around your finances, deep conversations. And often you can do that with a financial advisor because the third party actually helps get a really constructive, balanced outlook on what you should be doing in your finances. Physical well-being. Now, as I said earlier, I've done a lot of work on aging, and a lot of what happens as people age could be prevented by focusing on their physical well-being. This doesn't mean you need to go to the gym every single day, but it does mean you need to look at your body and take care of it. So you need to do maintenance. As one gets older, you need to do more maintenance. The same as if you bought a car and the car is now 30 or 40 or 50 or 60 years old, you would be expecting to do more repairs and more maintenance on it than when it was brand new. Same with your body. So make sure that you maintain your body, because one of the things around the physical body, and I've seen this many times, that when people are not well or something is not right with your physical body, it does affect how they think and feel. It does affect how they think and feel. So work on it. You're never possibly going to ever, as you get older, you're always going to have some kind of ache or pain. But the point is, make sure that you're managing this by being active. And active can be anything that you like. Now, I had a friend who had genetically bad knees. This person, her family had always had low levels of cartilage in the knee. And so if she went and walked for, say, 30, 40 minutes, she would probably have to put her feet up the next day for nearly most of the day. It was so sore. And anyway, she's a good friend. And I said to her, look, this is what we're going to do. So we worked out a regime of what she could do differently. So instead of wearing high-heeled shoes, I said, why don't you wear flat trainers and carry your high-heeled shoes in a bag? And just before you get to the restaurant, stop somewhere, take your high heels off and take your trainers off and put on your high heels. And it was a whole bunch of things that we did. And if you talk to her today, she could walk for 30 minutes quite comfortably because she managed what was happening. And these are still the same. Genetically, they still got no cartilage in them, or very little cartilage. But by managing it differently, she was able to deal with it and have a much better lifestyle than if she hadn't. So physical well-being is a big one because it affects how we think in our heads. Community well-being, like where you live and who you have around you. So it's really interesting because as people age, as I say, in the Life Architects program that we run, I always remember I was running this program down at Dunedin, and one of the people in the workshop said, well, I'm going to retire to Oamaru. When we retire, everybody's like, why would you want to retire there? And he said, oh, my wife's got a second cousin there. And I said to him, so how many times you met the second cousin? He said, once. And And we then had a conversation in the workshop around, you're going to actually be shifting to a place where you have no friends, no social networks. And those are really, really important. So I think about, this community well-being, who you're surrounded by. And again, it goes back to the kind of people you're surrounded by and the environment that you're in. So now we come to the really important piece. Not that the rest wasn't important, because it is, but this is the one I think that is the key to building your resiliency and wellness. It's gratitude practice. So I said at the beginning, does anybody do a gratitude practice? If you do, pop it up in the private chat. You don't have to put your name up. I'd be interested to know whether anybody does. So a gratitude practice is spending time either morning or night, or morning and night, maybe 5 minutes, maybe no more each time, actually being grateful for what has happened during the day. So it's finding those things that you are grateful for during the day that's happened to you if you're doing it at night. Now, you can do it two ways. There's only two ways you can really make it work. One is that you write it into a journal. A lot of people feel comfortable writing it into a journal. The second way you can do it, which is finding yourself a quiet space and saying it out loud. Thinking about it in your head does not work to the same degree as writing it or saying it out loud. Now, that is behavioral science. I can promise you that if you have something that is worrying you and you write it down or you say it out loud, and you've probably experienced this in your own lives, it changes how you feel about it. You've heard that old saying, a problem shared is a problem halved. And that isn't an old wives' tale, it's a reality, and it's also based on behavioral science. So write it down in a journal, or find a quiet space and just sit down and think, close your eyes and think about it. What happened today that I'm truly grateful for? Now, I do it morning and night, right? And I find that sometimes at night it takes me more than 5 minutes, because you start going through all the things in the day that you're really grateful for. And these can be small things, they can be big things, but it changes how your perspective is on the world. And it changes how you see things. And it also makes you start to think about things in a different way. And so our programming often is to see what doesn't work in the world. Our programming is often to see what is wrong, or to complain about things. And this stops us doing this because it focuses us on the positive. Once you start looking for positive things, it's quite astonishing, really quite astonishing, how many things you find. It could be, I'll give you a perfect example. The other day, I was walking down the street, and as I was walking down the street, this person walked towards me, and they smiled, and I smiled back. I don't know the person. I'll probably never see them again in my life. But that person smiled to me. And when I did my gratitude practice that night, it was actually, how blessed am I to actually have passed that person with that person smiling, grateful for it. So you might go, yeah, that's really positive, and that's really good, and I could do this. What is the importance of it? Well, our thinking patterns are muscles. They're like muscles. The best way to describe them are like muscles. So the things that you think about often, and the patterns that you have got in the way that you think, as we talked about, often come from our childhood, our upbringing, our experiences. What we're doing is training our mind to think of the positive, the things that are really good in our lives. And the interesting thing I find when I do this gratitude practice is that even if something, let's call it negative, happens in my life, I can look at it and go, I'm really grateful for the way I responded to that negative thing that happened. Or I'm really grateful for what it made me think about in terms of that. So in other words, the negativity often becomes an element of positivity, which sounds crazy, but it's a reality. And I think deeper down is that it changes your whole perspective on life. And I think I might have said in the first seminar that we had, after COVID, we did change our business model quite a lot during COVID because, like everybody else, we had to. And a client was saying to me after COVID, what did you do? And I told him, and he said, wow, he said, that's amazing. He said, what is your resilience practice? And I hadn't quite thought about it in those kind of terms. And I said, well, ever since I was knee-high to a grasshopper, I've always looked at where the possibility or opportunity sits in any situation, as long as I can remember. Same thing as gratitude. It's actually getting your locus of focus into a different place than, oh, this has gone wrong for me. And I can go back and I can recount to you probably at least 6 times in my life where if I had followed, let's call it, what I'd been brought up with to a degree, I would have really struggled. It didn't mean I didn't struggle when I looked at it from this possibility and opportunity perspective, but I actually approached it from a very different perspective. So I think challenge yourself, if you do nothing else out of this seminar, challenge yourself to start your gratitude practice. Go buy yourself a journal or find a quiet place at night and say, I'm going to spend 5 minutes thinking about the things I am really grateful for, thankful for, or blessed for that have happened during this day. And it was really brought home to me, and I might have mentioned this in the first seminar we had, but it was, last year, I was running a workshop in Wellington, then I had to drive from Wellington to Palmerston North to run a workshop the next day in Palmerston North. I hadn't driven from Wellington to Palmerston North for years, so I thought I'd stop in Plympton and have some lunch. I didn't realize the road out of Wellington was so great, and so that road just kept going and going and going to practically Levin. And so by the time I actually got to stop, it was about Foxton. So I pulled up on the side of the road in Foxton. I was on my phone talking to Andy in her office in Auckland. And I said to him, Andy, I've got to call you back. Because in talking, I noticed this pink rose in the garden beside where I pulled up, which was astonishing. It was an amazing rose. And I had to just go and look at it. I photographed it and I smelled it. And then I called him back and he said, what were you doing? And I said, well, it was this rose. Now, the interesting thing that came to me was if I didn't follow a gratitude practice, I almost certainly would not have noticed that rose. And I almost certainly wouldn't have actually said to Andy, let me spend some focused time enjoying this rose and I'll call you back. So those are the sort of things I think that begin to change your life. And I could talk here for half an hour about all the other things and other situations in my life where focusing on what I'm grateful for, focused on what is important and what I feel is really great opportunities coming into my life. That if you asked me to sit down and spend 5 minutes on the things that were negative in my life, I probably couldn't. Because even those things that one would perceive as negative, I'm actually looking at the positive aspects of them and being grateful for those because they're often learnings. So that would be my challenge. Start a gratitude practice. And if you're not sure about it, do it for, say, 60 days. Do it for 60 days, and then if it doesn't work for you, don't do it. But there's a secret in there. If you do something for 30 days, you're going to form a new habit, and you'll probably keep doing it. On page 25, we say here, look, what does gratitude do? It improves physical health. It improves psychological health. That's the big one. If you want to improve your wellness and your resilience, gratitude practice is probably the most important element in doing that. It'll improve your sleep because you probably won't be having these thoughts running around in your mind like you might if you hadn't. Creates better relationships. This very morning, I sent a message on Messenger to a person who, in the last week has come back into my life. I knew this person probably 15 years ago, and they were a member of my ex-wife's family, And I sort of lost touch with them after we separated. And they came back into my life about a week ago. And we've had a couple of messages go back and forth. And this morning, because I practice gratitude, I woke up and I said, I need to send this person a message about how lucky I am they're back in my life, which I did. And so it creates better relationships because you start being grateful for the people who are in your life who matter to you. Enhance your self-worth. It changes how you feel about yourself. You know, often people who don't do gratitude and who have this self-talk around a lot of things that don't go right end up constantly focusing on what doesn't go right or how they fail. So gratitude practice changes that, and it increases your mental strength. It's like anything else, is that when you constantly do it, you get stronger. So down the bottom of page 26, we have a great quote: your life truly matters. Give gratitude and intention. Always be the best that you choose to be, not what anybody else chooses to be, what you choose to be. Because gratitude unlocks the fullness of life and it turns what we have into enough and more. Because I think gratitude practice is one of those things that when you start doing it, it builds your resilience, it builds your wellness, but it has a multiplier effect more than anything else that I've ever experienced at all. Use a journal or do reflection by sitting down and talking about it in a quiet space. So that brings us to the end of today. My challenge to you is to go out and try doing gratitude practice. Try looking at what's happened in your day that you really give thanks for. And like one of the things that I will be saying in my gratitude practice tonight is I am really thankful and blessed to be able to be with all of you today and hopefully to help you build wellness and resilience. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat or send them through to Jenny. Very happy to give you a call, very happy to email you and just to chat about anything that I feel can help you or that you would like answers to. So thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you again, same place, same time next week. Thanks a lot.